You're waiting in the drive-through teller line at your local bank on a Thursday afternoon. The driver in the car in front of you is cashing his paycheck. So he puts the check in his driver's license into the transaction tube. Whoosh, he sends it off to the drive-through teller. Being distracted by a phone call, the driver then pulls off as the teller is sending back the transaction tube. As a result, when you pull up to conduct your transaction, you find a tube containing $1,185.65 in cash, and the other's driver's license. Now, what is the ethical thing to do? There are three. Bobby, I know what you would do. No, you do the right thing. Okay, but okay. Okay, what'd you say?
Give it back.
Relax. Number one, send the tube back to the teller. Inform him that the driver of the car ahead pulled off without completing their transaction. B, take the money and the driver's license and then drive those items to the other driver's home. After all, you already know his address. C, remove the dollar bills from the tube, but leave behind the 65 cents and the driver's license, then drive off with your found money. The third choice is finders keepers, losers weepers. That might be a moral standard of elementary school, but Jewish tradition does not see it that way. And certainly our portion doesn't see it that way. Let me give you Deuteronomy 22, verses 1 through 3. If you see your fellow's ox or sheep gone astray, do not ignore it. I mean, literally it says, do not hide yourself, but okay. You must take it back to your fellow. If your fellow does not live near you, or you do not know who he is, you shall bring it home, and it shall remain with you until your fellow claims it. Then you shall give it back to him. You shall do the same with his ass. You shall do the same with his garment. So too shall you do it with anything that your fellow loses and you find. You must not remain indifferent. Do we live in a world like this? Imagine a world where no one feared losing their property. A world in which another person's loss automatically becomes our concern. Rabbinic tradition is obsessed with this mitzvah. In fact, the part of the Talmud called Baba Metzia deals a lot of energy on this very teaching. So rabbinic tradition kind of plays it out. And these are some of the things that rabbinic tradition derives from this passage. First, the Midrash, rabbinic legend, or rabbinic interpretation makes it clear that we're obligated to return the objects of our enemies, not just our friends. Number two, if it is at all possible, we don't wait for the owner to come and claim the lost object. Even if you don't know the owner, we are obligated to try to return the lost property as long as doing so won't cost us a lot of money. The finder must make some kind of public announcement seeking the owner. In social media, it's very easy to do that. Number three, only if it is simply impossible for an individual to identify the property as his own, such as you find some coins on the floor and on the street, there's no way to identify them, can we assume that the loser has given up hope of recovering it? In other words, we have to assume that they haven't, except for if they lost some coins. We are not entitled to compensation for actions. Returning a lost object is a biblical injunction. I told you a story a while back when I found money in Smithtown Bank. It was over $1,000, and I gave it back, and I was expecting the bank to give me at least a free checking account. What I wanted was wrong. In my opinion, Jewish tradition would emphatically say we should deny ourselves any compensation. Clearly, if you find a wallet that bears the owner's name, not to return it is stealing. The obligation to return lost property extends even to going out of your way, bending down and picking it up. And although one may be rushing to an appointment, not to step and pick up a lost object is to violate both the commandment to return the object and the really separate commandment that you are not allowed to ignore it. Number 6, we are to keep the object until the owner finds us or we find them. And during the time of the temple, and I love this, the finding of the lost object would be announced publicly during the next 3 festivals when Jews gathered in Jerusalem. And the Talmud goes on to explain this. Literally in the temple, they had a lost and found. Isn't that amazing? We are not obligated to suffer a loss in looking after the found object and are allowed to charge for maintenance costs incurred while waiting for him to arrive, identify, and claim it. We're obligated to keep the property intact. In other words, you lost your horse. You take in the horse. You feed the horse. When someone comes to claim the horse, you have a right to say, you know, the feeding was really expensive. I had to take him to the vet. We are not allowed to use the object if we find a carpet, we're forbidden to decorate our house with it. Now, here's another application of the mitzvah. Rabbi Rudnick, aren't you glad that you were here tonight? I mean, you know, you don't even have to go to Talmud class. I mean, when I write a message, I think first, what will stimulate Rabbi Rudnick? Forget about the rest of the people. Here is another application of the mitzvah. That is taking responsibility when we damage someone else's property. If we accidentally dent another person's car in a parking lot, we must leave a note with our phone number. It's from Baba Metzia. Extending the mitzvah includes preventing damage as well. For instance, if your neighbor's house is about to be flooded and he's not home, then you're required to set up sandbags. You could later ask for reimbursement, but you have to do it. Not reimbursement for doing it, reimbursement for the sandbags. So what is all this about? Obviously, Jewish tradition understands respect for ownership, but people have things, they belong to them. For society to function, we must affirm what is mine and what yours is yours. Without that, life would be chaotic and brutal. It would create a society of distrust, fear, and retribution. I need to know that when I am away, my neighbor knows that my home is not a department store to take whatever they want. And if someone is breaking in, they must call the police. But these laws have a deeper meaning. Here is what makes these laws so fascinating. It's a law which we must self-police. We will not be prosecuted for what we do not do. Who can prove whether we saw it or not? And in most cases, how will anyone know that we found something and did not return it, except there's security cameras everywhere, so that's a whole other matter. The Torah's appeal is to conscience. The individual is both a defendant and a judge. Our instinctive response is not to take the time or trouble to get involved. And if we don't, who is really keeping track? I find this mitzvah so relevant as we approach the high holidays, and this is the month of Elul when we're supposed to be doing a lot of reflecting. At times, we turn the other way. We try not to see. We try not to get involved. We try to utilize indifference as a defense against our selfishness. We live a big, it's not my problem. Perhaps this mitzvah is a guidepost to our pre-high holidays personal accounting, which needs to happen before we get to synagogue because this requires a lot of self-searching. Conscience is not, thank goodness I was not caught. Rather, it is about when we look into the mirror in the privacy of our own life, and what do we see? Am I proud of my behavior? Am I comfortable with my responses to the world? When I've turned away, when have I turned away when I was capable of looking? When have I used indifference as an excuse? When have I ignored mutual responsibility, instead chosen mutual indifference? In the end, the High Holidays is about this self-accounting. It's about these questions and so many more. So who wants to take the test? Not many of us. That's why our tradition is shouting at us, take the test. Shabbat Shalom.